It's great to have you here on the Clark Howard Show. You know, our mission is to serve you with advice and information that empowers you so you make better financial decisions in your life. It's Friday. You know what that means? It's time for Clark Stinks. Something else that stinks? Oh, man. The state of air traffic control in the United States could really mess up summertime travel. And by the way, this is not something that has been a problem just now. This has been an ongoing problem. I feel so bad for the air traffic controllers. They're not the problem. We, the United States, are the problem. I'll tell you what that means later on in this podcast. But right now you get to hear how I am the problem in today's Clark
I should have never encouraged you to speak.
You must think I'm pretty stupid.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
Well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe you're right, pal.
Clark, you stink for telling your audience that completing applications for vacant positions is a waste of time because no one looks at the applications, interviews are often fake, and companies have already decided who they're going to pick for the position, most often an internal candidate. To make such a blanket statement was over the top and outright wrong. As the recruitment manager for my employer, I spend the majority of my time posting jobs, determining screening criteria, screening all applicants to determine who are minimally qualified, and working with hiring managers to make sure the interview process is fair and equitable. I also happen to be the HR flunky, as you so eloquently describe, who informs candidates that they have not been chosen for an interview and/or the position. While I understand that networking is helpful in the job search process, at my employer, candidates are chosen based on their qualifications and not on who they know. Handling the recruitment process any other way could lead to lawsuits by unchosen candidates, something HR and the hiring manager want to avoid. Not every job has been handed over to AI, at least not yet. Excuse me while I get back to screening applications. Lindsey.
Lindsey, thank you very much. And if I spoke with too broad a brush, and I tend to be, see things at extremes, I thank you for taking the time to write in. I will tell you, I hear so much from people who feel beaten down, who apply job after job after job after job. And often people apply to big name companies. That's all they know to apply to. And they get these standard rejection letters. And so you're saying at your company that's not how it works at all. So me painting with such a broad brush, Lindsey, means that somebody might not apply for a job at your company where they might really be a real candidate. So from your telling, I way overstated the case.
Krista stinks. And then they say, just kidding, you're great, but I think I do stink with this one. A suggestion, though, read one question at a time and let Clark answer. For me, it's confusing to try to grasp both questions at once while listening. Possible ideas. Read one full question, let Clark answer since he might end up answering the second question even if it wasn't asked. Then, if he wanted to, he could include a short, concise follow-up question or just let it be and see if people still have follow-up questions later. Sometimes I think it'd be easier to grasp when the question and answer are simpler or given in bites. One part now, one part later if people have a question.
See, that's the first time I've ever posted a Clark Stinks myself. No, it's funny because I'm so linear, just as we heard right here. It's hard for me sometimes to remember, what was the first thing? Then people will say, well, Clark, you didn't even answer what the person said, because I only have the ability to process one thought at a time.
Okay. Oh, I forgot to put the person's name in there, but sorry about that too. And I appreciate the feedback, so I will definitely try to just read one at a time. I won't double up anymore. This isn't a Clark Stinks issue, but I did want to comment on the podcast. I found it interesting to hear that Lane's vision was one of the reasons she and Clark had gotten together. I had always assumed she had lost a bet. Just kidding, Cliff in Virginia. Just had to say it.
I love that clip.
All right.
No, I mean, just imagine poor Lane when she had her LASIK and she opened her eyes and for the first time ever truly saw what I looked like.
Stop it. I don't think you stink, but you missed an opportunity with a caller I just heard. They wrote in about their daughter graduating with $20,000 in debt that they could afford to pay off and asked your advice if they should. Your response that she would appreciate it more if she held on to one of the 4 loans at the lowest interest rate was good, but I would take it one step further. We are in a very similar situation. We paid all but $5,000 per year for my son. He is our only child, and we are in very good, similar financial position as the caller. My advice would have been to let her pay it all off so that she does appreciate it. But as the parent, I would be keeping that money secretly in a separate high-yield savings account and gift it back to her with any interest. I think it would teach a valuable lesson and discipline. She could then use that money for whatever she wanted, maybe a house down payment. Linda.
Linda, I love this. I love this whole thought process. You know, the problem with a wealthy family is that if you can afford to do something for your kid, and you do, they don't necessarily learn the consequences of the borrowing that took place in the first place. So every family has to navigate this, what's best for them. And I like your suggestion as well. If you're disciplined with money, and every time your kid makes a payment and you're noting that and you're putting that money aside, and then when they finish paying it off, you say, hey, guess what? We're really proud of you. Here's the money back. I think that's a great way to teach financial discipline to a kid and at the same time reward them back. So, yeah.
Clark, you can stink because you give a piece of an answer that needs more details. You answered my question on Monday, February 24th about moving my 529 plan to my parents, the student's grandparents, so I don't have to report it on the FAFSA. However, you quickly said you can't just do that, referring to the transfer ownership of a 529 from a parent to grandparent. I think you are incorrect. My 529 accounts are with Ohio's College Advantage, and they have a straightforward form to transfer the ownership, and they link to it. You said some schools may ask about 529 plans owned by a grandparent, but I'm willing to take steps for the more likely case when they don't ask. Can you provide more details of why you said you can't just transfer ownership of the account? Barry.
Barry, I definitely blew that because I know you can transfer ownership of an account, as well as in an account you own, you can change the beneficiary designation. There may be a state plan somewhere that doesn't allow it, but I'm not aware of that. So I just wasn't thinking clearly, I guess, when I answered the question. Now, let's go back to the original thing about you moving money to grandparents because the rule change that assets in a grandparent's hands don't hurt a child the way they used to for financial aid. I'm trying to figure out how that transfer helps in the financial aid evaluation process of the 529 not being a parental asset and being a grandparent's asset. I don't know how that specifically helps in the financial aid evaluation process, but they are transfers that generally are allowable.
I think you and your message about the value of credit cards and cash back stinks so bad because of who is getting crushed. I don't know if you've ever found out, but all the money that's given to the people who can afford, not really, since consumer debt is over $1 trillion, and that's not including mortgages, who can afford the credit cards and annual fees that come along with getting points and cash back, come from lower income people that can't afford it. But their life is built on our deceptive system of credit cards. It crashes 10. You should study the report that the Federal Reserve put out in 2023. You can also, you look at this link, and they sent a link. It's a sick economy we live in where we're okay with robbing from lower income families to give upper income a cash back. And they can't even manage their own budgets, so they max out every credit card they can get. It's evil, and I wish you could make your listeners aware of who is really getting destroyed. Chad.
Thank you. All right. So the core of the problem.
Oh, I wanted to do one. I'm sorry, Clark. Let me read the end of this because I feel like I want to make sure that you can address this.
Okay.
I seriously doubt you would ever air this. Your philosophy is built on credit. It would implode your mission and go against your message.
Implode that my message is built on credit?
Right.
I don't really understand.
I think Chad hears you talking about cash back and all those things and thinks that.
Oh, okay. So the way our system works in the United States is different than anywhere else in the world. The Visa MasterCard cartel has been able to charge the merchants costs for taking credit cards that are massively profitable. And so our incentives in the United States are wrong. And they're all based on the Visa MasterCard cartel funneling these giant profit margins on the backs of merchants to the banks. So what the banks do with their credit cards is to heavy spenders, the top 20% of income earners in the United States, they offer these reward cards trying to get huge volume run through them so that they make the money on the merchant fees. What you're talking about wealthy people being cross-subsidized by low-income people that are paying high interest rates, that doesn't happen elsewhere in the world, and it's because the real problem here is the Visa MasterCard cartel and the huge fees that are so many times higher than they are anywhere else in the world. It's crazy. So I don't look at it specifically the way you do, because I see this other element at play. Credit card companies are happy to have people who pay in full, who run big dollar volumes, is like a separate business from people who use credit cards as a payment system, not as a payment system, but as a borrowing system, and are paying an average interest rate today of around 25%. They are two distinct markets, one not necessarily subsidizing the other. I'm repeating myself, but the rewards are all being subsidized by merchants, not by people paying high interest on cards that run balances.
And we do always say, like, we don't want anyone to use credit cards unless they're using them responsibly and paying them off every month. This is not,
Yeah, I'm not a shill for the banks trying to get people to pay 25%. Nobody ever got rich paying Visa or MasterCard 25% interest. I used to say 18, but now the average rate's been pushed up to about 25.
This Clark Stinks regards Clark's ongoing advice to switch away from a high-cost Big 3 cell phone carrier plan to a low-cost MVNO carrier plan. Most recently,
we should say what MVNO is. That's a mobile virtual network operator. That's somebody who buys wholesale capacity on one of the Big 3's networks.
Clark's advice doesn't stink, i.e. we're saving significant money, but I just wanted to call out an unanticipated side effect we have experienced after switching from T-Mobile to Mint Mobile, which, as we know, is owned by T-Mobile and uses their network. We did not change our phone numbers. However, after switching to Mint, a handful of automated text alert notifications we used to get from various businesses have stopped. Apparently, despite not changing phone numbers, the cell service switch flagged somehow in their systems, and our phone numbers are now considered invalid and must be manually re-verified. In most cases, we don't even know since there was an issue until we realized we were no longer receiving notifications. Charlie,
thank you. There's a legacy technology that some companies use. I think some government public alert kind of systems use, that requires, as part of the registration, the name of the cell phone carrier you're using. I had this recently. I'm on Google Fi, which is the little cell phone operation owned by Google, which is not little, but their cell phone operation is. And it asked me specifically, and there was a long list of carriers I'd never heard of, a lot of the MVNOs, and I had to select my MVNO in addition to my number to receive the alerts. So there are cases like that, and I don't even understand why that legacy way of setting up alerts operates with some organizations, but it seems really, really unnecessary to me. Maybe somebody in the industry can explain why it does involve you listing your individual cell carrier.
Clark doesn't stink, but a while ago he was talking about his prostate cancer diagnosis, and he was discussing the research he did about finding the latest treatment and going out to California. This description was quite intimidating for someone who may already be overwhelmed by a diagnosis, and not everyone can travel. I recommend that individuals check clinicaltrials.gov, which has all ongoing clinical trials. The centers participating in the trial would be a good place to go for the most advanced treatment, and there may be a center near where they live. I'm a daily listener, Mark.
Mark, thank you. I was not familiar with this website, and I think that's awesome that you shared this information. Just hearing your words, I thought of two people already that it would be useful for me to tell them about going to this clinical trials website, which you said is clinicaltrials.gov, and seeing what is going on, and maybe it is driving distance from where you are. If I go back in the Wayback Machine, when I was diagnosed with prostate cancer 17 years ago, at the time, clinical practice was very much geared towards doing aggressive treatment on every individual, every man who was diagnosed with prostate cancer. Second largest killer of men in the United States, I think, at this point. And by reading medical journals, I was able to find out that that's not where research university medical centers were with prostate cancer. There was roughly about 40% of men who did not need immediate treatment. In fact, immediate treatment would be harmful to them. And so I could not find any practice near where I was living at the time that would offer what was then called watchful waiting, now called active surveillance. And so that's how I ended up in Los Angeles for my care. And here I am 17 years later, and the only thing I've ever had other than annual tests and exams, and of late every year an MRI, is I've been on 3 different medicines for my prostate cancer, and there's been no meaningful growth, knock on formica, over the 17 years, and it's been great. But if I had stayed local at that time, the only option that was being offered to me was surgery or extreme treatment that would have been completely unnecessary in my specific circumstance. Prostate cancer has many different genetic makeups, and so there are different procedures, diagnoses, and treatment depending on, or non-treatment, depending on the genetic makeup of the prostate cancer you have. So thank you, Mark, for your suggestion. I really appreciate it. And I'm about to have next week my annual MRI, and we'll see if I'm still good to go or not. And I'll let you know. Coming up ahead, am I going to get there on my flight? What a question to have to worry about with the sudden extreme unreliability of air travel in the United States. I can't imagine having been in an air traffic control center, how unbelievably difficult it is to carry that responsibility of being an air traffic controller. Incredibly difficult job. And think about carrying that on your shoulders, that you make a mistake in that tower and people potentially are dead. And then our controllers in the United States are dealing with a technology system that is so crazy obsolete. And I'm going to go back on my soapbox. I've been on for decades about what we need to do about this. in a second. But right now you need to know the problems going on in the Northeast airspace are the tip of the iceberg. We have a significant shortage of air traffic controllers in the U.S. The system is creaky. There aren't enough controllers trained to work in the busy towers, and something's got to give. And it can't be safety. So it means delays for you and me, cancellations for you and me. And what's funny is I have a flight coming up in 2 weeks where I'm flying into Newark. Newark obviously has been a mess. So far, the airline I'm booked on is not offering a waiver where I can rebook in the LaGuardia or Kennedy that are not having the degree of difficulty that Newark is, because the airspace is treated as a separate one controlled out of Philadelphia. But this is something we're having problems pop up at different places in the United States because we're going about it all wrong. Do you know how pretty much every other country does it now? And our neighbors to the north, Canada, as I've been on my soapbox again for decades, has been doing this right for so long, runs extremely advanced air traffic control. And how do they do it? It's a private enterprise. NAV Canada is a private organization, a nonprofit, that is able to continually lower fees for air traffic control services across Canadian airspace because it's run as a private organization with the most modern equipment and is able to do it so efficiently that the cost of managing the airspace, one of the busiest airspaces in the world, by the way, is the Canadian airspace. And they're able to do it for a fraction of the cost of us with a much better safety margin because it is a private organization. And I know that the Congress is never excited about not controlling something in our lives. But the long-term fix to this involves privatizing air traffic control. For you and me flying this summer, I need for you to follow my playbook. When I'm flying, I fly almost every week. And when I'm flying, I use FlightAware. There are other apps as well. I also use Flight Radar 24. But FlightAware gives you the ability to not rely on the airline telling you what's going on with your flight. But you go on FlightAware, you put in your flight number, and it'll show you if it's showing that it's going to go on time, or if it's canceled or delayed or whatever. And then you can click in it. There's a little button that says, "Where's my plane now?" And you can see where the plane is. And if your plane has not left wherever it is to come get you, and it's delayed an hour and a half from where it is, you know that even though it says you're going on time, you're not, unless the airline substitutes another aircraft, which can happen rarely. But I'm always tracking because then I can contact the airline really early and say, hey, I see that there's a potential long delay with my flight. Can I be rebooked on flight number, whatever? I'm proactive every flight because I know, particularly with summer thunderstorms, that flight schedules get disrupted. Now we have this UFO problem, not UFOs, but all the problems that are now encroaching on reliability from the air traffic control issues. And know that there are going to be a lot of schedule changes as a result of the ATC issues where flights you're booked on may not happen. They may be pulled out of the schedule. And you don't know, particularly if you book through a third-party website. So you want to check your flights way before the day you're going just to make sure the flight you're on is still going as you originally bought and booked, especially if your booking has happened more than 6 weeks out before what you're going to travel on.
All right, I have some travel questions.
Oh, let's see if I can handle them.
Dan sent this one in. I'm trying to figure out how to get a family of 6 to Japan next summer during school summer vacation without breaking the bank. I've got 400,000 United points, but looking at points costs now, it seems that's not enough. We're in California with LAX as our closest major airport. Any tips?
Okay, first of all, family of 6, 400,000 points, that not being enough to get to Japan seems crazy unless you're not going in coach. That should be way more than enough points for
Really?
6 people to go.
I
Yeah.
would think that would be like,
Well, look at the underlying fares. The underlying airfares typically from LA to Japan in coach around $700. So
but maybe
you
not
think
for
about
next summer yet. Is that the problem maybe?
well, you can't even look at flights for next summer yet. So that brings me to the
Okay.
core of what I would say to you. Even if you're going to use United points for this trip, you need to wait a while. Airlines tend to post, even though they might be posting point availability, they're not going to post flight availabilities till 330 days out of your travel. So you need to wait till the back end of summer to look at flights to Japan for next summer. And know that this early, once they post point availabilities, there's nothing wrong with you booking with points really early when the point totals are low enough that it can get all 6 of you with the 400,000 points. But the thing is, if you've got that many United points, you probably have some status that allows you to redeposit without penalty when prices drop later. You also may find that fares go low enough that you actually pay, I know, perish the thought, you pay cash for your tickets to Japan and hold on to your points for future travel where the redemption of points would be a better idea. But it's such a completely different story to Asian destinations from the West Coast of the United States, LA, San Francisco, Seattle principally. The cost of those flights is a tiny fraction of what they are from the Midwest or the eastern part of the country.
Does United have any partner airlines that they should look at too for using
Absolutely. Absolutely. But again, we're too early for that.
Okay.
So this is something you would do later is, and you could look at the Points Guy or any of a number of websites that tell you the most efficient use of points for a flight from LA to Japan.
Okay, this is from Mark in Georgia. My wife and I plan to go on a 2-week cruise from Honolulu to Tahiti, visiting several islands in Hawaii and French Polynesia. I want to know the best way and optimal time to get airfare to Honolulu and then return from Papeete.
Is that how you say that, Papeete?
I believe so. Someone can
I've
correct
never
me.
known. I've always mispronounced any French name so badly.
I could be mispronouncing it. I'm sure
No,
someone will tell
no.
me if I am.
No, you're a scholar. I was the opposite. I was not a scholar.
When should I buy the tickets? Would you recommend economy, comfort plus, or business, given the long flying time? I mean, I'd always recommend business, but the problem is the price.
It's like 9 times the cost
gosh.
of coach usually.
Can't imagine.
So the flight from LA to Tahiti is about 8.5 hours. So you got to make your own call on that. What class
Well, they want
of
to go
service you
to
want.
Honolulu first, right?
Right.
And
So
then,
but I'm thinking about, because the Honolulu flight from the West Coast is not that far.
okay.
Do we know where they're going from Honolulu to Tahiti?
Mm-hmm.
We don't know where they're flying from in the United States. Oh, he's from Georgia.
It's from Georgia, so I would assume Atlanta.
Okay, so Mark, regardless of how you end up flying this route from to Hawaii and then from Tahiti back to the United States, you want to do both from Los Angeles. That's the theme here.
I know.
Because we just talked about the Japan thing. Because the fares from the East Coast to Hawaii and to Tahiti will be cost prohibitive. So you can buy a really cheap ticket round trip from Georgia to LA and then buy out of LA. Now, for you being a Georgian, Delta, which operates the largest hub in the world of any airline in Atlanta, Delta now flies to Tahiti. Is that what you said?
I think
right
so.
Way to say it? They fly nonstop from Los Angeles there. They obviously fly to Hawaii. And your first best option would probably be on them because, to my knowledge, they're the only airline that actually serves both routes. And so you could go LA to Honolulu and then Tahiti back to LA and save a lot of money versus a flight going to both from the East Coast. Again, you'll have to make the call on whether you want to do a coach ticket, a premium economy, which is like a domestic first class seat, or you want to spend the big bucks that will be, gosh, probably $4,000 or so to go. No, Delta doesn't do lie flats to Honolulu from LA. So it'd be maybe $3,000 to do that in the front of the plane. That would be a lot of money.
Yeah. And to go to Honolulu from LA isn't that long of a flight. I wouldn't.
Yeah, it's 5 hours, 50 minutes.
All right.
Plus or minus 10.
Heidi,
Not that I've done it a lot.
this is a switch up from Heidi. Do you drink coffee on airplanes? I ask because I've seen some stuff about this online. I just listened to a podcast about it. There seems to be conflicting information about whether or not the water provided on planes is safe. What is your opinion?
So, Heidi, first of all, I've never had a cup of coffee in my life. I have tasted coffee ice cream. I've never had coffee. But the same thing would be if I was having a hot tea. So, the tanks on airplanes are supposed to be cleaned and sanitized properly. And the water that is in those tanks that's used to make hot water and to make coffee on the planes is supposed to be clean. But as you pointed out, there are conflicting studies that say don't go near the coffee on an airplane. Others that say the coffee on planes is just fine, meaning the water, the underlying water supply, that the tanks carry bacteria, that they're not properly sanitized. Others say they are completely. There's no definitive study that I know of that absolutely says the water in the tanks on an airplane is just fine. That's why you'll see a lot of flight crews do not drink coffee on the airplane. They bring it on from the terminal rather than taking what for them would be free coffee on the airplane. So I don't know what to say about that. Should I say? I mean, that's really all I can say.
Sure.
Because there is no clear answer.
I mean, I didn't know about this potential problem, but I do drink. I love coffee, and I have had it on planes, and the reason I don't drink it anymore is because it's always been awful. Like, it's just been bad coffee.
I wouldn't know bad coffee from good coffee.
I know.
Yeah, I just don't understand the coffee thing.
I know. It's one of my vices for sure. But, I mean, it's not that bad for you, they say, as long as you don't put a bunch of sugar and everything in it, I guess.
Well, my teenage son is addicted to coffee. And the other day, we were riding around. He's home from college. And so he wanted to go to Starbucks and get his favorite drink. And what did he do? He pulled into the drive-through.
Something you don't like to do.
Oh, man, I thought I was going to have my birthday by the time we made it around the building. And then they tell him the cost of whatever he got was this shaken something, and it was just under $5. And I was
not bad for Starbucks these days.
I was dying there. I mean, I don't even know how long we were in that line. But it was never moving.
Well, he must have really, really wanted it because he knew he was going to what he was about to experience with his dad in the car during this. I mean, I would really hesitate.
So let me tell you something about Grant. He is just as stubborn as I am.
Good for him.
And who was driving?
Grant.
That's right. So he had driver's privilege to make me suffer. What I should have done.
But I bet you made him suffer too.
No, we were in a shopping center parking lot. I should have gotten out and said, when you make it through this line in 20 minutes, I'll come back from having walked a mile. Otherwise, I just sat on my rear end for that long time.
But you didn't go, I can't believe that cost so much money, and do you know, blah, blah, blah. You didn't do any of that to him.
Of course I did.
Of course you did.
Of course I did. You know what I said? I said, what would that cost you if you would have made it at home?
That's the part that would be. I didn't realize you'd be so upset about the drive-through time, too.
I hate drive-thrus. You know, anybody who ever took economics classes hates two things. Reserved parking spaces. You know why you hate reserved parking spaces, right?
Why?
It creates extreme shortage. You know, if you look at any parking lot and you see how many spaces are typically empty in a parking lot, the parking deck, garage, whatever you call them, parking structure, there's so many more spaces than there'd need to be if there weren't reserved parking spaces. It creates enormous economic inefficiency. So you think about a drive-through, and you got all these cars in the drive-through, and one person's order takes a long time, the next person's order is a short time. Everybody behind has to wait behind the vehicle that has the difficult order that everybody's held up by.
Well, a lot of them make you move to a designated spot. You know who has that down? It's Chick-fil-A has that just completely nailed.
And that is true. They're overcoming economic inefficiency.
There you go.
So, do you think anybody cared about anything we just talked about for the last 3 minutes?
It's really good that it's the end of the show.
This is like a test. Did you fall asleep during us talking about
No, we should give away a prize on our Instagram account, like for anyone who could answer a question about this little.
The last segment?
Yeah.
Okay.
I might do that. Follow us on Instagram.
Give them a free coffee pod for their coffee maker?
No.
It'll be better than that?
How about like a...
Give them a pass that they can go sit in a drive-through line somewhere?
A Starbucks gift card?
Encourage overspending on coffee?
You're just incorrigible.
I know. Remember that stubborn thing I talked about?
Oh, you know I'm stubborn too.
Oh, I know that.
Let's just talk smack about each other. I'm as stubborn as a mule. What else you got? I look at things through Krista colored glasses. You say that all the time.
Well, you do have. You're the one who originally made that statement.
No, you did.
Yourself.
You said I have Krista colored glasses about things when I'm too Pollyanna.
Krista is one of the most positive people I know, and but you know,
you're
that's
positive
what's said
too,
about
though.
me too.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. Anyway, enough.
Okay.
Just know positively that what we're about is you having an absolutely great weekend in front of you.
Yes.
Right? That's what I want you to have. And I want to mention this is Memorial Day weekend. For most of us, it's the unofficial kickoff to summer. It's time for cookouts and all the rest. A great time to be with family and friends. But what's so often forgotten is, what is Memorial Day about? It's about the brave men and women over the centuries who put their lives on the line for your and my freedom and paid the ultimate sacrifice. And I am so grateful to the men and women who serve in our U.S. Armed Forces or have served in the past. And have a great time this weekend. Have a wonderful time Monday. But remember, why do we have this day off? Take just a second to be grateful to those who paid the ultimate sacrifice. And have a wonderful holiday weekend. I'll see you next Wednesday.